Hello, Abnormal Investigations family. I want to say that the premiere with Brittany done very, very well. It's still done very, very well, and a lot of y'all have asked for a part two. I'm going to be working on a part two with her if she's available. I would love to be able to do a part two with her, but I'm also working on some other guests that may be coming on the show, so we got a lot of things coming up. I hope you all enjoy what we've got coming up. I know I'm looking forward to speaking to a lot of these guests, and I don't know, I have a lot of questions for them also, and I just hope we can all learn something together. I want to thank Scott and Brooks for stepping up and helping me with Brittany and doing the premiere. We had a really good time with her. She had a lot of encounters, has some more to share, but it means a lot to me because everything I'm doing right now is also helping to support bringing Hunter home. That's why your likes are so important. Your likes do a lot. They help the algorithm and everything, and they help us focus on bringing Hunter home. I've got an encounter for y'all today, and it comes from Alaska. I think you're going to really enjoy this one. I think it's a pretty good encounter, so let's get to it. This encounter happened about 4 years ago in the summer of 2020 in the deep spruce forest of coastal Alaska. On the weekends or after work and on long Alaskan days, I would pack a backpack and head out to explore this beautiful state. In the early September of 2020, I decided to explore an area I'd driven past but never actually hiked. There aren't any trails in this area, and it's not the easiest place to go, so I didn't expect to see much out there except for maybe some moose or perhaps a fox. That being said, moose can aggressively sometimes in coastal Alaskan. Alaska is also known to get aggressive at times, and coastal Alaska is also known for wolves, coyotes, wolverines, black bear, and brown bear. So I brought my Taurus 44 Magnum revolver with me. It had been my companion on many hikes, and though I had never fired it at anything but a paper target, it made me feel more secure. Most wild animals, even bears, can be scared off with the shouting and aggressive posturing. They're not generally looking for a fight with something ready to fight back. Usually, they're pretty peaceful, as long as you don't surprise them, come between them and a kill, or go near them when they are with their young. All the same, it's better to be safe than sorry, and there are other things you can do, you can run into, and also there are other things in the deep wilderness that are cunning and more dangerous than a wild animal. Today, I was headed for just such a place. To reach it, you have to cross a river. The only way to do that safely is via a railroad bridge. We're not really supposed to walk across there, but as long as there are no trains coming, no, I figured no one would care, as if it's in the middle of nowhere. It's next to the state forest I was headed to, is a native Alaskan hunting ground. Though only my friend, we'll call Jack, had been known to hunt there. I parked my truck off the side of the road, hiked to the trail that leads to the bridge, and slipped down it quietly in the early morning. As I crossed the bridge, a strange feeling of unease started to tug at me. Everything seemed normal. I hadn't seen, heard, or smelt anything strange, and it was a bit bright, sunny Alaska day and about 60 degrees. Absolutely perfect weather for hiking. I chalked it up to being nervous about being seen crossing the railroad trestle and pushed down the nervousness. It was easy to see that this bridge was not made for foot travel. There's no walking lane for humans, and the old rotting timbers of the railroad ties are 9 to 10 inches apart. Many were so rotted out I wasn't sure I should even trust them to step on them. My feeling of uneasiness grew as I slowly picked my way across the bridge, realizing that if a train happens to come by, I might need to dive 20 feet off into the freezing water below to avoid getting crushed. Not many trains go through this section of the line, but if for any reason I wanted to beat a hasty retreat, there's no way I could cross the bridge in a hurry without falling to my death. Again I pushed my uneasiness down and told myself to focus on how beautiful the spruce trees were on the other side of the river, and before long I would be disembarking on the other side. A small creek flowed into the river not far from the bridge. My spirit started to rise as I waded across and moved along the riverbank. As soon as I reached the other side, I found moose tracks more than I've ever seen concentrated in one place before. Big ones, little ones, medium size. I counted at least 8 different moose that had been through the past hours. I continued along the riverbed, finding more tracks, now with the bear and the wolf tracks crisscrossing as well. The sheer volume of fresh tracks from the large wild creatures was beautiful to see, but also reminded me how alone I was and how large the wildlife out here can be. I came upon a set of tracks that made me pause. Heading in the same direction, I was walking only a few hours old tracks from a large mama bear with 2 good-sized cubs. I decided only to walk another 100 yards or so down the riverbed before turning into the deep evergreen woods. Checking and rechecking my compass, I took a reading, picked a tree to aim for, and repeated the process. As I stepped underneath the dark green canopy of the air, became suddenly still. The pine needles covering the ground dead in the sound of my footsteps, and the thick evergreen boughs covered everything in the refreshing shade. Breathing in the good green smell, my spirits once again began to rise as I trudged off into the forest. After a good stretch of relatively easy hiking, the forest began to grow closer together. More fallen trees and undergrowth blocked my path. This slowed my progress and reduced visibility down to about 5 feet ahead. Still, I knew I must be getting close to the hill that was my destination, so I excitedly pushed on. Climbing over a large fallen tree and jumping down onto the other side, my boots clinked as I landed looking down. I found myself standing on the bones of several large moose. Now, moose out here can get enormous. A big bull getting over 1,800 pounds is not unheard of. Not many things will mess with such a large, strong, and aggressive creature, as they will fight back ferociously if cornered. Yet here I was on the bones of 3 large moose. I had no idea what could kill something this powerful and strong. Even large predators tend to avoid them when they are full grown, and it could not have been disease or an accident because all these remains were piled together. A poacher, perhaps, but the antlers and skulls were still there. Some people hunt only for the meat, but a moose this big, it can give you 500 pounds of delicious red meat. Who would possibly need 3 of them? Eventually, I started to calm down. I realized that whoever or whatever had done this was probably no longer in the area, as these moose had been dead for a few years. A pack of wolves or coyotes could have easily stripped the meat from the bones left behind by another predator. Or so I was telling myself. Taking heart in that, I pushed on. A few minutes later, found myself stepping into a wide circular clearing filled with blueberry bushes. Wild blueberries are a favorite snack of mine, so I happily filled my canteen cup as I walked through the bushes toward the hill I'd been aiming for on the other side. Climbing up to a nice sunny spot, I set down my backpack and decided to rest for a while and eat some long overdue lunch. I boiled water in my canteen cup and cooked up a pouch of ramen noodles with the small pieces of beef jerky in it. Simple food, I know, but it's easy to carry and it fills you up after a long day of hiking. After my concoction and several handfuls of blueberries, I tipped my hat over my eyes, leaned back against the old stump to close my eyes and just enjoy the sounds of nature for a while. Everything was so peaceful. Everything was so calm. After all, whatever had killed those moose was long gone by now, probably happened years ago. I convinced myself it must have been a poacher long gone now. This was a peaceful place, a restful place, just what I needed after a long week of work. I awoke with a start, looking at the time and realizing I had been asleep for hours. The sun was already dropping behind the mountains. Crack! I heard a loud snapping off of sticks in the undergrowth. I realized that it must have been the sound of that rose me from my nap. Placing a hand on my pistol, I quickly swung my backpack on and started to head back to where I had entered the blueberry patch. I had marked the place with a large stick that I placed into the tree. Finding it, I began to push through the deep undergrowth again, following my compass the opposite way, back along the same route I'd used that morning. Suddenly I froze next to a giant fallen tree with the bones of the 3 dead moose, with what the mutilated carcass of a baby moose. Its body had been ripped open, 2 of its legs were gone, and the head was no longer attached. I stood there frozen, realizing whatever did this dragged it here and come by while I was sleeping only a few 100 yards away. The moss and undergrowth were so thick I could not see any tracks, but whatever had done this must have been dangerous. Cursing my stupidity at taking an unplanned nap, I came to a quick decision. The creek that I had waded and the river made as simple landmarks I could not easily miss. If I left the route I had taken to get there and headed northwest, I should get back to the bridge more quickly. Glancing at my compass, I headed off in that direction. At first I made a good time, but after a while I ran into deep overgrowth again. Shortcuts make long delays, I quoted to myself, but now I was committed, so I pushed on through the dense undergrowth. I knew I must be getting close to the river when I suddenly heard another loud crack and crunching sound. Something very large was pushing through the undergrowth and not even trying to be quiet. Heading forward, I suddenly came out of the trees along the banks of the creek. Crossing over, I turned west, still hearing whatever it was. It was enormous. It was crashing through the undergrowth behind me. The undergrowth was cracking ever so loud. The small evergreen trees and fewer bushes so I could move more quickly. Behind me I heard a splash. That thing, the enormous creature, had just crossed the creek hot on my heels. Glancing back, I could see the tops of the small trees and saplings bending and waving as this creature pushed past them. I could feel the panic building inside me, when suddenly I stepped out of the woods and could see the bridge only 20 yards from me. Remembering how difficult it had been to cross, and with the last of the daylight swiftly disappearing, I decided that trying to run was the worst decision I could make. Drawing my revolver and crossing myself, I whispered a brief prayer, all the while hearing this thing get closer and closer. Aiming toward my pursuer, I forced my breathing to steady, cocked the hammer back, and summoning every bit of courage I had, roared back into the woods. But I was armed, and I'm not afraid to shoot. The sounds got near, even louder. I bellowed out, final warning. The footsteps stopped. Still mostly hidden behind the trees, I could see a figure covered in thick brown fur. It was standing on 2 legs, towering well over 8 feet tall and wider than any man. It let out a deafening roar. It was deep and it was guttural, and it went plumb through me. Focusing all of my willpower not to run, I aimed my .44 and I fired, Mike. The bullet struck the tree right in front of this enormous monster of the forest and sent bark and bits of flying wood and report echoed off the mountains when finally my tormentor turned and hurried off back the way it came. A distant splash told me it had crossed the creek. Letting go a breath I had not realized I was holding, I lowered my gun as the adrenaline wore off. My hands and knees began to shake. My ears still ringing from the blast of my hand cannon, I removed the spent shell casing and replaced it with another round. If that thing came back, I wanted all 5 shots ready to go in a moment's notice. Holstering my gun, I made my way back across the bridge. As quickly as I could without slipping or falling. My beat-up old pickup truck had never looked more welcoming and inviting, I can tell you that. As I started the drive home and grew more calm, my mind started to race. What the hell was that thing, Mike? What could move through the forest so quickly, Mike? What had the power to kill moose like that? Why had it followed me far so long, when it easily could have overtaken me? A Bigfoot, maybe? I've always been a bit of a skeptic, but now I was starting to question myself. I mean, the eyes I saw through their brush, yeah, they had brown fur and stuff around them, but the eyes were human. They were brown. They were human. The next day I made up my mind that I wanted some answers. Leaving my heavy backpack behind, I strapped my 44 back on and loaded my Marlin 45-70 guide gun with the heaviest, most powerful, dangerous game loads I could find. I went back, Mike. But when I got to the bridge, I did not have the courage to recross it. I started to, several times, but I could not force myself to cross it. It wasn't because I was afraid of falling. It wasn't because I was afraid of a train, Mike. It was simply, I was afraid of what was waiting for me on the other side. Had it got my scent? Because I had fired at it, was I now its enemy? Was it waiting for another chance? Did it let me go as a warning, and if I go back this time there will be no warning? Is it waiting to simply take me out? As I turned, I felt as a coward, but I did walk away. It roared again from the other end of the bridge. Oh my God. If I would have crossed the bridge, it was waiting on the other side. I would have walked right to it. So me walking away that day and not having the courage probably saved my life. It probably made me not be another missing person in Alaska. I will never go back to this place again. I wanted to share my story with you all, but I want you to understand, those eyes were human. It was standing on 2 feet, it was 8 foot tall, and it was broader than any man. I hope you all at least learned something from my encounter. Yeah, that's a good one. A lot of people in Alaska do go missing. It's probably good that you didn't go back, and that goes back to always follow your gut feeling. You know, they say if you have that feeling, you should follow it, and it's usually right. And it sounds like that day it probably saved you. I would stay away from that place too. Probably you firing at it, you know, it's probably not happy with you. And it was probably watching to see if you was going to cross that bridge, and it might have let you get to the middle of that old crumbly bridge, and it might have come barreling across there after you. It's hard to tell. But, you know, it might have just stayed waiting there for you too till you got to the other side, grabbed you, tossed you off the edge, you know. But yeah, I would stay away from there. Sounds like it was a Sasquatch. That's what I would say you encountered. In Alaska, they are known to be large. Some of the largest ones are said to be in Alaska. So I would say you had a pretty good encounter, and yeah, I believe if it would have wanted you, it would have took you. Probably the only thing that saved you is you did not pull your gun or fire at it until you had got to the bridge to where you were able to escape. I believe if you would have done that earlier, you would have never exited the woods. It wouldn't have allowed that, because odds are it wasn't just that one. There was probably a family of them there, because usually the one you see is the one that's allowing you to see it, and there's other ones out there that's hidden. Just remember that. Guys, until next time, keep your head on a swivel. Don't be something's dinner. Thank you so much for the support from me and Hunter. Everything's in the description of this video. Today's a very big day, so thank you all so much for everything you're doing and the gifts that you're sending to the P.O. Box. They're all going underneath the Christmas tree still, and there will be a day of opening. Thank you all very much. God bless, and we'll see you on the next one.